This is an overview of the midterm study guide. Question 1 is discuss Beccaria's contributions to the classical school of thought in criminal justice. Be sure to identify his most important ideas and reasoning. In the textbook, there's a great discussion about Beccaria's ideas, why he thought that it was important to implement the things that he talked about. That was his reasoning. So make sure that you highlight those things. Don't just say he was important to the classical school of thought. That's true, but it's not enough. You've got to really delve into what are those important ideas and why did he think they were important to do. Explain the positivist view and discuss how it is different from the classical school. So you'll notice that I did give you page numbers here to refer to. So if you don't want to have to read too far into the chapter, you can look at those pages. Remember that these are two different ways of looking at crime, and make sure that you're identifying what it is that positivists believe, okay, why they're different. Which view do you agree with most and why? Are you more in the classical school or are you more of a positivist? And why is that? Also discuss the function of punishment and the 3 philosophical assumptions about humans. Why do we punish people? What's the function? And what are the assumptions about why we need to punish humans? Which philosophical assumption is most correct? This is just about your opinion. Which one of these 3 do you think makes the most sense about why we punish people? And explain why you reach that conclusion. Finally, explain the due process and crime control models of law, pages 19 to 21. Which model do you think provides the best outcomes for society and why? That last part's your opinion. Remember the 2 different models, the crime control and the due process. And make sure that you give an example when you explain how they work. Give an example of a situation in which the due process model is applied and one in which the crime control model is applied, and how they have different outcomes. Question 2 is from chapter 3. Explain the work of Dorothea Dix and outline the major reforms she argued should be made in prisons. She was a prominent person during her time. She spent 4 years going to various jails and prisons, and she wrote about the problems that she saw and what she thought should be done to correct these problems. So make sure that you explain those in detail. Discuss how the contract and lease systems work and identify the pros and cons of these programs, okay? So this is essentially the use of prison labor. How do these programs work, and what are the pros and cons of these programs? Should inmates be paid minimum wage? And support your answer here. Explain the difference between ethics and morals. That's on page 70 there. Explain teleological and deontological ethical systems, and then explain 3 of the 7 forms of ethics. Okay, so there are 7 different forms of ethics: natural law, religious ethics, etc. Make sure that you choose 3 of those, explain what they are, and then which form do you think might be best to use if you're a correctional officer, and why might that be? So let's say you choose natural law as the form of ethics to use if you're a correctional officer, and you explain why. Would that answer be different or the same if you were a law enforcement officer? And why might that be? Discuss the following problems in jails in the U.S. today: overcrowding, inmate suicides, and inmates with mental health issues. So explain each of those separately. Then discuss the approaches being used to address these issues. Now, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can discuss the problem of overcrowding and discuss the approaches right after that. and then inmate suicides, and then the approaches after that, and then inmates with mental health issues, and then the approaches after that. Or you can discuss all three first, and then discuss the approaches for each of those. Either way will work. Analyze how well they are working. Okay, so after you've discussed that, again, you can think about overcrowding, how well are those approaches working, inmate suicides, how well are those approaches working, etc. Finally, explain how reentry programs and community jails work and evaluate the effectiveness of these programs. Do you think Americans support or oppose these programs? Again, explain your answer. So here's the important thing about these questions. You will be randomly assigned 2 from these 4. Okay, so when you log in, you'll randomly be assigned 2 of these questions. Of course, you should study all 4 of them. A great thing to do would be to make an outline for each of them so that you know exactly what you would discuss if you are assigned, question 1, or question 3, or question 4. Some people, because they really want to make sure that they can do their best and get the best grade, they write out a full answer for each one of these questions. And then when they log in to take the test, they see which questions they got, they copy and paste their full answer into the submission box for each question, and then they click submit. And that's fine. I'm fine with that because these are people who took the time to write out answers to all 4 questions. They clearly are trying to get an A. Some people are okay with just doing an outline. That's fine too. What's not a great idea is to just wing it and hope for the best, and hope that you can look up the information and reference the page numbers that I've given you in each question and write it on the fly. You can do it that way, but you'll probably run out of time. You know what kind of student you are. I know that you'll do fine if you just study.